Welcome to Yam Talks. Over the last 3 weeks, I've dropped my running back, wide receiver, and tight end rankings and tiers here on YouTube. But now we finally come to my top 24 quarterbacks entering the 2025 fantasy season. The tiers in this video are as following. We got tier 1 league winners. So these are guys who I expect could finish number 1 at the position. And considering that they are quarterbacks, they have the chance to finish as the number 1 player in fantasy as a whole. And then tier 2, very strong weekly starters. So these are guys you can start confidently every week and expect elite level production. And I think these quarterbacks have the potential to finishing top 3 to top 5 at the position. And then we got tier 3 strong starters. So these are essentially just quarterback ones, guys you're going to start every week and get impactful production. And I expect these guys to finish top 10 to top 12 this season. And then you got tier 4 solid starters. And these are players who are more geared towards quarterback twos. I think you're going to start them based on matchups and bye weeks and things like that. But these are guys you can expect to finish top 15 to top 24 at the quarterback position. So we'll jump right in here with tier 1, our league-winning quarterbacks. And we're going to start with the player who was the number 1 player in fantasy last year, and that's Lamar Jackson. Lamar was the only quarterback last year to finish with more than 400 points. He put up a ridiculous 430.4 points in fantasy last year, and that made him the number 1 player in fantasy and not just at the quarterback position. So obviously, as we know, he possesses elite rushing upside. He's a former MVP, and he's the no-brainer quarterback 1 going into drafts this summer. And next we got Josh Allen. So Josh Allen was the number 2 quarterback last year in fantasy. He did win MVP last year. He put up 379 points, and Josh Allen also possesses really elite rushing upside in addition to his passing upside. So just if he gets a couple more touchdowns through his feet, that could propel him to the number 1 position in any given year. And speaking of league winners, I appreciate you guys watching this video to gain that winning edge this fantasy season, but let me help you even more. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be releasing my fantasy football draft guide to the public for the first time ever. I make one of these every year for myself because I play a lot of fantasy football and I win a lot of fantasy football. And a large part of that is because of the work I put into these draft guides. I promise you this is all you're going to need entering your drafts this summer. And they're going to give you a chance to win your league, whether it be for money or just simply for bragging rights. You'll find all my rankings, projections, notes, and so much more in this ultimate cheat sheet. As a computer scientist, I've created custom AI and machine learning models on top of countless hours of research that really give you that winning edge you need in drafts. Pre-ordering a guide right now will cost you only $20. I say only $20 because I've honestly put in a lot of work into this and it feels like I'm kind of underselling myself here. But if you do buy it now for $20, you lock in this price for the rest of your life. So next summer, as my channel grows, as I introduce even better AI models, you're only going to pay what you paid today. So if you're interested in winning more this offseason, I'm going to have my email up here on the screen. Just shoot me an email. I'll get you all set up. If you don't have email for some reason, you can either drop a comment below or hit me on my Twitter, which will be in the description. Or sorry, X these days, which will be in the description, and I'll get you all right. So that wraps up tier 1, and now we move on to tier 2. And these are quarterbacks who like I said, I think have the potential to finish as top 3 to top 5 players at the position. So we got Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow was the quarterback 3 last year in Cincinnati. He only put up 6.2 less points than Josh Allen. The Bengals defense was horrible last year, and Burrow literally had to carry his team on his back to put up points to keep them in games every single week. And newsflash, the Bengals defense has not gotten better, guys. So expect more of the same. Expect this offense being expected to put up like 30 points a game to win games. And that's going to just turn into elite level fantasy production for every player on this offense. And I don't have him in that league winners tier because Joe Burrow doesn't have that rushing upside that Lamar or Josh Allen have. But I still think he can easily finish as a top 3 quarterback next year in fantasy. And then next we got Jalen Hurts as my quarterback 4 in this tier. Jalen Hurts was the quarterback 8 last year in fantasy. And he did finish 8th overall, but he was averaging the 5th most points a game at the position. In 2023, we did see him finish as the quarterback 2, and then in 2022, he was the quarterback 3. So we've seen him finish top 3 in recent years. There's 100% top three upside here with him because we know what the Eagles love to do at the goal line with the tush push. But I do think the potential of a top two finish is not in the cards for Jalen Hurts because Saquon Barkley coming into this offense has completely changed the way Philly plays football. And that's not going to change next year because they literally just won a Super Bowl with that formula. So with Saquon kind of capping that elite rushing upside and some of that passing upside, I think Jalen Hurts he definitely cannot be put into that league winners category. But still, I mean, as my quarterback 4, super solid quarterback for fantasy. And then next we got Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, Patrick Mahomes had a down year last year with but he did have a weaker offense with a lot of injuries. But this offense is going to be healthier this year and is going to be better. And on top of that, Mahomes does have a chip on his shoulder with losing the Super Bowl and all the crap from the media these days about him losing the Super Bowl. And last season was the first time in his career that Mahomes finished outside of a top 10 quarterback in fantasy since he became a starter in Kansas City. He was the quarterback 12 in fantasy last year. But keep in mind, he's finished as a quarterback 1 twice, last in 2022, and he's finished as a quarterback 4 twice. So we've seen him finish as a top 4 quarterback 4 times in his career. So expect Mahomes to be better next year, and I think he's still a very elite option in fantasy at the position. And then next we got the electrifying offensive rookie of the year last year in Jaden Daniels for the Commanders. So as a rookie, he was the quarterback 5 last year. He now enters his second season with an improved offense, a weaker defense, which is going to work to his favor, kind of like what we talked about with Joe Burrow. And a combination of all this with his elite rushing and passing capabilities does give him that top 5 potential pretty easily, in my opinion. And then next, we got the last player in this tier who's earned his spot in this tier, just like he earned that massive contract last year, and that's Baker Mayfield. So Baker Mayfield was the quarterback 4 in fantasy last year, and he does have the potential to repeat as a top 5 quarterback this year because this offense is stacked with players like Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, Kate Otten, Bucky Irving, but now you're also getting Chris Godwin back in the mix off the injury, and they drafted an elite wide receiver in Emeka Egbuka. So this Bucs offense it's really hard for Baker to fail in this offense, and I think there's a really solid shot he finishes a top 5 quarterback again next year. And then next we move on to tier 3. So again, these are weekly quarterback 1s. They're going to probably finish top 10, top 12, but they lack that top 5 elite upside. And we'll start with a quarterback who's not the flashiest quarterback we're going to see on this list, but is one of the most consistent, and that's Jared Goff. He finished as the quarterback 10 in 2022, quarterback 7 in 2023, and then last year he was the quarterback 6. So there are some questions regarding this offense now with Ben Johnson gone, who was their offensive coordinator last year. But there's still so much talent on this offense, and over the last 3 years, Goff has built that confidence and that consistency that should see him as a top 10 quarterback again in fantasy this year. And then next we got a player who was a pretty big disappointment last year, but so was his team overall. That's Brock Purdy. The Niners are battling a lot of key injuries last year, including Brock Purdy, so that didn't equal crazy offensive production for fantasy and just wins in real life. And Purdy really stood no chance by midseason last year with Ayuk out and Debo missing games and whatever else. But he still finishes the quarterback 13, playing in only 15 games. So still a pretty respectable finish. But in 2023, he was a quarterback 6. And in my opinion, we should compare him to what we saw in 2023 because this Niners offense is going to be healthier next year. And they're going to look to bounce back. Vegas currently has this Niners team projected to win 11, 12 games, and they have the easiest schedule in the league by a mile. So have some faith in Brock Purdy this offseason entering your drafts, and you should be happy with him as your quarterback 1. Then next, we got another rookie on this list, and honestly, for me at least, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of people here, a really surprisingly productive rookie last year for fantasy, and that's Bo Nix. So Bo Nix in Denver last year as a rookie was the quarterback 7. And the Broncos offense has improved this offseason by adding Evan Ingram and drafting guys like Pat Bryant and RJ Harvey. So Bo Nix enters his sophomore season behind a top 5 offensive line in the league with an improved offense. And under Sean Payton, we saw what he could do last year. It wasn't like a couple weeks off where he was just balling out. He was consistently doing really well, and I expect him to build off that next year, and he could be easily a top 10 quarterback if he continues to trend upwards. And then next we got Kyler Murray. So with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, I fully expect the Cardinals to really get the pass game going this year to make that push to make the playoffs. When you have guys like Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison, you want to get them involved. And Kyler was the quarterback 10 last year on honestly like kind of felt like a mediocre season. But we've seen him finish as high as quarterback 3 in the past. And I definitely think he could finish as a top 10 to top 12 quarterback this season given what he has around him. And then next we got our third rookie on this list, and that's Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams was the number 1 overall pick last year, but was a really big disappointment. But from all of the reports I've seen come out of Chicago since they moved on from that old regime at head coach, it kind of seems obvious that he really stood no chance as a rookie last year, kind of like Bryce Young 2 years ago. It was just a mess, and he didn't have what he needed to succeed. But now you have an offensive mastermind in Ben Johnson coming in as head coach that made Jared Goff a top 8 quarterback in fantasy. And this Bears offense is stacked with skilled players. You have you just brought in again Luther Burden, Colston Loveland this year in the draft. You already have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. So with how stacked this Bears offense is, and the fact that Caleb Williams was a generational prospect coming into the draft last year, going number 1 overall, I really, really like him. I'm very high on him, considering his ADP puts him in like the 8th to 9th round in this year's drafts at the moment. So if Caleb Williams was my quarterback 1, and I've drafted other players at wide receiver, running back, maybe even tight end up to the 8th round, I'd be super happy going with him with that upside that he does bring. And then next we got a player whose rookie campaign was the opposite of Caleb Williams, and that's CJ Stroud. So CJ Stroud was the offensive rookie of the year 2 years ago, but last year was definitely a struggle. And a lot of that had to do with a terrible offensive line out there in Houston. And unfortunately for Stroud, we can't say for certain that this O-line is going to be better. I mean, they put in some work this offseason on making it better, but they definitely addressed it, and they did draft both Iowa State receivers that will or should fit well into this offense. And Stroud definitely, as a player, has the potential to finish as a top 10 quarterback at the position this year. But it really it's going to come down to how supporting cast supports him. So that's what I got for Stroud. And then next we got Jordan Love. So Jordan Love was the quarterback 5 in fantasy in 2023, but he was the quarterback 17 last year, battling injuries throughout the whole year. And Green Bay drafted a wide receiver in the first round for the first time in decades. And I think that's going to be huge for them with Matthew Golden. And I definitely expect a healthy Jordan Love to be a top 12 quarterback in fantasy this year with a really smart offensive head coach and a solid supporting cast. And then next we got Justin Herbert. So Justin Herbert was the quarterback 11 last year in fantasy. I definitely think Herbert can finish between quarterback 8 to quarterback 12 this year. But I do think his ceiling is capped at like quarterback 8. And I think that because, the Chargers offense under Harbaugh is run first, and that is not changing this year with the additions of Najee Harris and Amari Hampton. If anything, they're going to run the ball more. And on top of that, to be honest, Justin Herbert, he has Ladd McConkey, who proved to be pretty elite last year, and then you have Trey Harris coming in as a rookie from Ole Miss, who still needs to prove himself in the NFL. But you're not going to see Herbert throwing the ball much when you don't have weapons all around him to throw the ball to. And Herbert's still a quarterback 1 on a weekly basis, but you're not going to get the elite upside, in my opinion. So when you're drafting guys, just keep that in mind. And then next we got a polarizing player, but Dak Prescott. This can go one of two ways. Either Dak gets hurt, he finishes outside of the top 30 again like last year, and the Cowboys likely move on from him next offseason, or he stays healthy, balls out, and he finishes as the quarterback 3 like he did in 2023. So any quarterback can get hurt any given week in the NFL. If you want to draft Dak in the 9th round or so, where his current ADP keeps him, I think it's a worthy gamble to take on a quarterback who does have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens to throw the ball to, and again, did finish as a quarterback 3 2 years ago. But that's a decision you're going to have to make. I don't think you can go wrong with Dak as your quarterback 1 in midway through your drafts, but that's the gist with Dak. And then next we got another big gamble, and that's Trevor Lawrence for the Jags. So T-Law hasn't lived up to being that generational number 1 pick he was said to be. But to be fair, the Jags haven't done much to like help T-Law out, but this offseason they definitely did. So you have Liam Cohen coming now, a young offensive head coach who should make this offense a lot better. But you also have Travis Hunter, BTJ, who was insane last year, some explosive running backs, and hopefully T-Law is injury free now going into this year. So T-Law being drafted as a quarterback 19 right now. If you take that late quarterback approach in your drafts, where you're not drafting a quarterback till later in your drafts, I mean, he's a really strong target with real potential to be a top 12 quarterback and outperform his ADP. And in 2 quarterback leagues, you might as well take the gamble on T-Law. So next we go into the final tier here, solid starters. So again, these are guys who are gonna have quarterback 1 weeks, but they're also gonna have weeks where they're not putting up top 12 numbers. These guys, I mean, you're gonna start them based on matchups most likely. Or in 2 quarterback leagues, these are solid second quarterbacks to have, or like super flex leagues or whatever else. So next we're going to start with Justin Fields, who's now a New York Jet. So when you're drafting Fields, you're banking on that rushing upside, which is so valuable for fantasy. And the fact that the Jets gave him a hefty 2-year contract to be the starter, at least for this year, I mean, it's a little safer to bank on that potential. But Aaron Glenn has already said, their new head coach, that they are going to be adopting a run-first approach with Breece Hall and with the running backs they do have on this team. But that's also going to include Justin Fields because we've seen the damage he can do on the ground. But with this being the Jets, I do think there's going to be weeks where starting Fields won't be a smart decision. But he is a player I would look to have to exploit some certain matchups throughout the year. And I think he's a really strong target for especially super flex or 2 quarterback leagues. And then next we got Bryce Young. So Bryce Young found his swagger back at the end of last season. Between weeks and 12, he was the quarterback 5 in fantasy. Between weeks 16 through 18, he was the quarterback 2 in fantasy, only behind Joe Burrow. And in week 18, he was the quarterback 1, putting up 5 touchdowns. So Bryce Young is currently going in the last 2 to 3 rounds of drafts, if not undrafted. And he enters next season with all this momentum behind him. He was a former number 1 overall pick. And he's got a potential game-changer rookie coming in with Ted McMillan, an improved offense under an offense-first head coach in Dave Canales. So, guys, just please listen to me on this one and draft Bryce Young at the end of your drafts in best ball leagues, in 2 quarterback leagues. As a backup quarterback in standard 1 quarterback leagues, Bryce Young is going to be your answer as a second quarterback. And just trust me on this one. And then next we got Tua Tagovailoa for the Miami Dolphins. And this is just a player I'm not going to be drafting, and it's nothing against him. I think he's a solid quarterback who can have really solid quarterback 1 numbers on a weekly basis. But the unfortunate fact with Tua is the head injuries, and he could get another concussion on any given week, and that would not be well for him or your fantasy teams. So I'm not taking him when you do have guys like Bryce Young you can take over him. So that's just a player I'm fading this year. And then next we got Matt Stafford. So Matthew Stafford was a quarterback 19 last year. As he does get older, he is turning 30, or he did turn 37 this year. I expect him to win games for the Rams this year. I do think the Rams are going to be a playoff team, but I don't expect him to finish as a top 12 quarterback in fantasy. But with a healthy Puka Nacua and the addition of Devontae Adams, he should be a solid second quarterback for when you need him for teams. And then next we got Mr. Aaron Rodgers, who finally signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Rodgers, I don't think there's a lot in Pittsburgh for Rodgers to succeed this year and to be a valuable fantasy quarterback, at least a quarterback 1. I mean, you got DK Metcalf and I guess Pat Freiermuth, but outside of that, in the passing game, you don't have much to bank on there for elite upside. And I may drop him in my rankings as we get closer to week 14. Not week 14, by week 1. But I do have him here for now because even on that mess of the Jets team last year, Rodgers was still the quarterback 15, which is really respectable. So I kind of have him in that range. But that's what I have for Rodgers for now. And then next we go on to Drake May. So this surprises a lot of people, but the Patriots are favored to win in 11 of their 17 games next year, according to Vegas right now. And I do think there's expectations for May to be better next year and his offense to be better as a whole under Vrabel next year. But I think a lot of these, if they do win 8 to 11 games, a lot of it's going to be through their defense and their run game with Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson. The harsh truth for the Pats and Pats fans is that you're still lacking a true dangerous receiving threat. So like maybe Stephon Diggs is mystery bags on the boat will feel him to be the wide receiver one this year, or an elite wide receiver for the Pats this year, or maybe rookie Kyle Williams emerges as a true number one threat, but we don't know who that is yet, and that's not going to help Drake May. So I don't think you can expect Drake May to be top 12 quarterback this year, considering his supporting cast. But I think there is some upside here with him for sure. And then next we go to the last player on this list, our quarterback 24, and that is Sam Darnold, who is now a Seattle Seahawk. So Darnold was a quarterback 9 last year on a really creative, potent Vikings offense. But it's impossible for us to know what version of Darnold we're going to get this year in Seattle. And if things aren't looking bright for Seattle come week 10 under Darnold, honestly, they may bench him for Jalen Milroe, the rookie quarterback they just drafted out of Alabama, to see what he has. But with Darnold's ADP positioning him at like quarterback 26 right now, it's not that big of a gamble. So grabbing him as your second or third quarterback, there is some upside there, especially when you have guys like JSN and Cooper Kupp. But those are my 24 quarterbacks entering drafts this year. Let me know what you guys think. And if you want to see where the rest of the quarterbacks around the league fall in my rankings, make sure you hit me up for my offseason draft guide where I'll have notes on all of them, where they all fall, the fifth tier, which isn't in this video, and all that. So thanks for tuning in like always, guys, and I'll catch y'all later.